Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Get Your Foot in the Door webinar run by BASWR. This is a webinar to provide an opportunity for newly qualified social workers and students to think about questions and pose questions to experts on a panel about what a employer would be looking for when you go for that job interview. So we've got some questions already, and the way that we're going to run this is kind of informal, so you can chat in here in the box and pose questions to us. We've got some questions already. If you'd like to voice your opinion, if you want to come in and say you know, in audio, that's absolutely fine. Just let us know. We can probably do that. We were just having a discussion before this started about social work and how I suppose difficult it can be sometimes, and we've actually already had a couple of panelists drop out, unfortunately. So yeah, that's sort of the way it is, but we're still going to run with it, and we'll hopefully be able to answer all your questions. What I'd firstly like to do is sort of introduce myself. So my name's Lee. I'm a newly qualified social worker, qualified in June of this year. I've been involved with the PPEG for about 2 years now, on and off, and I became the chair sort of early on this summer, just as I graduated, and it's been really interesting sort of getting to know Gavin and others within BASWR and talking about different things. So yeah, that's been a really good opportunity. I just want to thank obviously Gavin and everything for, you know, putting this together. This has been really good. I think what I'd like to do is let's introduce the panel. So if we start with Gavin, as I've mentioned him, Gavin works for BASWR. So Gavin, if you just want to say a few words about yourself, and then we'll continue around and introduce the panel.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, Lee. Yes, my name's Gavin Morgan. I'm a professional officer for the Association of Social Workers. For those of you who are watching this live, you'll be able to see that it says under me that my name is Stephanie Davis. My name is not Stephanie Davis, it's Gavin Morgan, but that's obviously to do with technology issues. Yes, so I work for the association, but I have recently been in practice. I've worked for a number of different services. It all began with the drug and alcohol services in the adult sector. I've also worked in the children and family sector. I've done a mixture of frontline practice and putting together strategies in relation to issues relating to parental substance misuse. I've worked for an organisation called CAFCAS, which is the Children and Families Court Advisory Service, where I've given advice to the family courts on matters relating to children and families, on all matters relating to family law. And I've also worked as a service manager in that organisation, where I think I developed some experience in relation to recruitment and knowing what we're looking for when we're looking to employ social workers into frontline roles. And I'm currently working for the association. So yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm looking forward to tonight, and I'm hoping that I can contribute to this panel discussion.
Oh no.
Now, I think.
Oh no.
Lee's voice is just.
Yeah, are we there? Are we there?
There you go.
You know what I've done? Because I was coughing, I'd pressed pause. Sorry, everybody. So thanks, Gavin. Thanks for that. So if Alex, do you want to introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you do?
Okay, so I'm Alex Smokes. My previous experience was working in a nursery, but I've done all sorts of jobs. Worked in a chippy, as Gabby knows, because I bring chips to our meetings every month. But yeah, I've just graduated myself. I'm a newly qualified social worker. I graduated from the University of Birmingham, and I'm currently working with a local authority in duty and assessment team, so frontline child protection, and that's pretty much me in a nutshell, really.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Alex. And David, I know that you've succumbed to rail networks issues tonight, so you're joining us from a cafe. Would you like to just say a little bit about your background and why you're here today?
Yeah, you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm a volunteer with Change Grow Live. Have been for the last 2 years. I'm fortunate enough to be involved in CGL on the service user. I'm not a paid employee, as I said, I'm a volunteer. Me and a few others on a thing called the Service User Committee represent roughly about 95,000 service users nationally. Part of our remit as the Service User Committee is to be involved in panel interviews and represent service users' questions to potential staff at level. So that would reflect CGL's values in relation to service users being at the heart of the organisation, and they come from ways. And that's the service users even interviewed all of the directors, the chief executive, everybody for their job. But if the service user panel and the questions felt that they weren't the right person, they wouldn't have got the job. So that's how much CGL are invested in service users' opinions.
Yeah, no, that voice is very, very important. Obviously, it surrounds everything that we do, isn't it? So, yeah. Oh, I think we might have lost Alex. I think. Can everyone still see Alex? No. No. Okay.
It's my dynamic personality.
We'll carry on. That's all right. We'll carry on. Don't worry. That's all right. So I think the best thing to do is we'll kick things off with some questions. I've got a list of some questions that have come to us beforehand from BASWA members and newly qualified, people that have been qualified for a while that are looking to get back into the profession, students that have just qualified. So the first question, I think if I can pose this to it's open to anyone who wants to answer it. Actually, one thing I will say is that there's another panel member going to join us at about 15:15, maybe in about 5 or 10 minutes, called Jackie. So she's, I think, she is a lecturer, I think, from my memory, if my memory serves me correctly. Yeah, so she's going to join us shortly. I think she's been called out to do something such as social work. I almost didn't make it myself today, so I'm glad that I've actually made it and I'm here. Okay, so we'll go back to the questions. This question is from Shell, and she's saying that she's been qualified since 2012. And that she feels that there's a lot of different avenues and stuff to get into social work now. So you've got like step up to social work, the frontline element, where you go into training within the job and you do it that way. And she feels that that there may be those struggling that are already qualified to gain employment. Is anyone else in her position? And if so, what are they doing to propel themselves into the social work arena?
Would you like me to start with that?
Yeah, Gavin. Yeah, absolutely. You looked like you wanted to answer it. Yeah, that'd be great.
So, I mean, first of all, it does sound like that question is partly aimed at some of the other people who are participating in tonight's webinar. So I suppose we can always hear from anyone who's got that particular experience.
Yeah.
But I think the real issue for Shell here is to look at what she can do to propel herself into that world of social work. I think that's the wording she used, and it's about her looking at her strengths. I mean, what I would suggest to Shell is have a look at what it is that look at your experiences, look at what made it your placement successful. Think about some of the feedback you got from your service users, and when you come to make your applications to your posts, look at how you meet those criteria, and don't forget to use the professional capabilities framework. That's our framework in social work, to kind of bring in examples of good practice, and and make sure that you don't undersell yourself.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? Not to undersell yourself, because I think social workers end up being quite modest people. I'm sure there's some studies out there somewhere about that. David, do you have any points on this?
Yeah, I think if I go back to a former life, be involved in this as well, I think in any interview situation, I think that confidence is really, really important. But if you've made it to interview, then you're as likely to get the job as anybody else. So it must be what happens in the interview that makes all the difference. because otherwise, if I've got a stack of 500 TVs at 5 places, if you're one of those 5 people in that room, you've done really well so far. So I'm now just narrowing it down to who I want to choose, who's best suited for the position. So I would feel that having a really good, really strong narrative about your backstory to, why you want to be in that room and why you're the best person for that job, I think is really important.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, David. Absolutely, and I think it's about how you come across in the interview as well, isn't it? And getting across that experience. I just want to welcome Jackie into the webinar. Hi, Jackie. Can you hear us?
Hi. Hiya. So I'm a bit late.
No, don't worry about it.
We had our graduation ceremony today, so I had to make a quick dash to get back.
That's lovely. That's really good. I remember mine. It was only a few months ago. We were just saying how this is what happens in social work. You end up being pulled all over the place, and here you are. So that's really good. Jackie, everyone else has sort of done a bit of an introduction, and we seem to have lost Alex. I'm not sure how, but that's okay. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, and then what I'll do is I'll come back to some questions. If that's all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my name is Jackie Yaski. I'm a lecturer in social work at Greenwich University. I've been there for 11 years now, and I teach on both the MA and BA social work programs, but also I'm currently interim program leader for the MA social work. And one of the courses I teach is around employability for students. And I also find the placements for the students as well on the MA and BA programs as well.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so that was actually generally really specific to the last question, which was what can someone do to propel themselves into the social work arena when they've had a bit of a break? And I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that particular question.
I mean, I don't know whether it's already been said, but maybe something around doing some voluntary work or paid work in the care sector. I guess that's already been mentioned, and just keeping yourself up to date with the changes in social care as well. That's always good to always a good thing to have in terms of the questions that universities ask ask applicants as well.
Yeah, no, that sort of thing was mentioned. It was interesting actually because it leads really well to the next question, which has come in on the chat tonight, which is from Helen, and Helen is asking when is the best time. Sorry, she's asked 2 questions. The first one was how is voluntary experience viewed when applying for jobs? Now, I sort of saw that before, and I was thinking about my own experience when having done voluntary work for working in the voluntary charity sector for 10 years and how invaluable that was to me before I started my degree, going into the degree, and then how when I actually got my first job, my manager had said to me, really, I gave you the job based on the fact that you had these values from past roles. Do you know what I mean? So that's sort of really important to consider, and I think it's viewed very highly, I would have thought, but I don't know whether anyone else wants to talk a little bit about that. Gavin, anyone? Just put your hand up and then we can go like that. David, brilliant.
I think, again, there are 2 bits to it. I think there's a bit about process. So every job's got a process to it, and different organisations operate in a different way. So if any organisation was sitting there interviewing somebody and somebody already knew the processes of that organisation, then I think that would be a strong position to be in. And I think the second part of that is going to be the engagement. Again, I mean, unfortunately, the only thing you can't teach at university is empathy. So, and I think that shows through if you've done some volunteering and stuff, and you've got a feel. I think by volunteering, you win on both levels. You show keenness, process, and you show that you've got the actual background experience of dealing with real people.
Yes. I mean, I think Jackie, can I put my hand up? I think also I would agree with that, and also following on from that, in terms of your placement experience as well, that also helps as well in terms of getting a job. And also because as I said, I also find the placements as well, and the students have to complete an application form. So if you're able to outline the application form, your previous experiences, be they paid or voluntary, that also helps you to be able to get that first placement as well. So I think it's about making sure that you are an all-round applicant as far as possible in terms of getting that first job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right. Yeah, sorry, Gavin, go on, go ahead.
Yeah, I think on this very specific issue of voluntary work, I would say definitely use it and don't undersell yourself. And when I first got into social work, as I said, I was focused very much on substance misuse. And this was a relatively neglected area at the time. I think we've come a long way since then. We've still got a long way to go, and as David would agree. But I had a lot of voluntary experience from working in a drug and alcohol support charity. And when I was applying for jobs, I was always making reference to the work I'd done there, because I really felt there was something valuable, not just because it was voluntary work where, you know, you're showing how much you believe in the service, but it was also to do with the fact that it was just relevant experience that I could draw on when I was talking about the service that I could deliver to our service users.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, you can also give examples to answer the questions as well. Answer the questions as well at an interview. So all experience is valid, really, be it paid or unpaid.
It's going to help a really great deal in values-based interviewing, because ultimately, you know, we're going to ask you about your values, but in relation to giving examples what that actually looks like. If you've had no experience, it's very difficult. Values-based probably catch you on the hop because you're trying to think of an example where, you know, your trustworthiness or, you know, whatever, you know, it comes into play. So I think the volunteering works. Actually, it works on every level.
Yeah. Yes.
We can't hear you, Lee.
That's a bad habit. It's just because I keep coughing. So I think what I was just saying was is that we've got someone to bring in on an audio question. Stephanie's got someone to bring in, and I'm wondering if we can do that.
We have Almira here. Can you hear us, Almira?
Yes, hello.
Oh, hello. Brilliant. Yeah, go ahead and answer your question to the panel.
Hi, thank you for letting me answer ask my question. I'm doing a master's degree in social work, so I'm in my second year, and my first placement was with a children's setting, and now I'm doing a statutory setting in an adult sector, and I've been advised by my tutor and many other professionals at my university to apply for ASYE, and my question is ASYE a mandatory thing that is important in terms of applying for jobs? And also, is there a time limit for doing an ASYE?
Does anyone have any particular want to answer that question? Or would you?
I'll go.
Yeah. Okay, Jackie. Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, because it's a question that my students often ask me, so I've got the answers for it, hopefully. In terms of the ASYE, it does stand you in good stead in terms of taking the next step in relation to, you know, the PCF, the rainbow. So where you're on the level about in terms of being a qualified social worker, doing the ASYE will assist you in getting that. In being able to take the next step. And then secondly, in terms of the timescale, my understanding is it's 3 years. You've got 3 years within which to complete it. But I think, you know, it does look good on your CV if you've completed it, if you've undertaken the ASYE program.
Is that okay, Almira?
Yes, that's great. And I just wanted to ask, if I did not do the ASYE program, would it jeopardize my chances of applying for a job?
Yeah, Gavin. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I'll let Alex answer first because I think she's got.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. So where I work, it's mandatory to have ASYE. And if you don't have ASYE, then you won't be offered the post. I know I don't think that's the same across the board, but I think there's certain pockets where they are bringing in the mandatory ASYE program. or to have had that.
Yeah, I work. Sorry, Gavin.
No,
You
no,
go ahead.
you speak firstly, and then I'll come in after you.
Okay, yeah. No, I was just going to say that I work for a London borough, and whilst they have a really good ASYE program, which I'm involved in at the moment, they also I met a social worker who'd been out of the degree for 2 years, and she'd applied. And actually, she's a social worker, not an ASYE social worker. So it's interesting to see the difference. You know, she'd been out of it for 2 years. She'd come back. She'd applied for a social work post that wasn't non ASYE, and she got that role. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter. There's no hard or fast answer. Obviously, Alex's is different, but you know, I think every local authority has different ways, and it's probably about contacting them and seeing what their policy is and how they're managing that with the ASYE program. Yeah.
And can I just add as well that often local authorities have 2 intakes as well. They have one, say, in July and then another one in January. So if you miss one, then there's an opportunity for you to apply again in January as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's really important. Yeah, Gavin, sorry, yeah, go for it.
So yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
just for those who aren't aware, and I'm sure most of the people who joined tonight are aware, but this is the ASYE is about your first year of employment and it being assessed and supported. And you know, there's 2 points to that. First, of the fact matter is that this is meant to be your supported year of employment, and it's very really what we would expect as any social worker doing their first year of work should have reduced caseloads and additional support to enable them to flourish in the job. Yes, there are some local authorities that don't offer it. So in which case, there's no expectation that you would need it when you're going for a job in that place. But if there is an option to do the ASYE and you don't take it, what you've potentially done is not taken up an opportunity that was available to you. And what I've found with some of the people I've spoken to is that there's certain employers that they can't go to now for the foreseeable future for that reason. And so if you do have the opportunity, I'd say take it.
Thank you.
But of course, if it's not an option, then it's not an option. And then in the future, you know, if an employer asks you why you haven't done it, there's a good reason. We can't hear you, Lee.
Every time, so sorry. I think it's definitely always about evidencing, you know, what you haven't done and giving those reasons, isn't it? And if it's a valid decision, then that's absolutely fine. You know, if there's reasons for it, if you can provide evidence and back it up, then that, you know, it shouldn't really be a problem. Okay, so that was really good answers there. I think if we go back to the questions that we got in beforehand, because we've done a couple from tonight, I think there was a question from Andrea, and Andrea wants to know, do you have to have a statutory placement to secure a job at the end of your course? Which I think is something that I know that my lecturers were absolutely hounded about, you know, the whole time we were on our course. And I think maybe, I don't know, Jackie, do you want to weigh in?
Well, as I said, I get the same comments from my students, and so I have to explain to them about the issue around statutory interventions as opposed to statutory placement. And it's about working within a legal framework, working around managing risk, working with complexity. And you can get that from a drugs and alcohol organisation, fostering organisation, as well as, you know, CAFCAS and local authorities. So it's about helping students to sort of look more broadly than just the local authority. But I mean, but having said that, it's sometimes a challenge for students to look beyond the local authority kind of framework, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I could sort of weigh in on this one a little bit, because my experience is that I didn't actually have a statutory placement. I obviously did statutory work on placement, but then managed to secure, you know, a job with a local borough. So that was, you know, the answer for me was I didn't need it, and it's about evidencing that work. You're working with complexity, exactly like you say, Jackie. Yeah. Does anyone else want to say anything about that? Yeah, Alex. Yeah.
For one of my placements, my first placement was based wasn't a statutory placement, but I think just drawing on what you said, just making sure that when you're doing your portfolio or anything like that, evidencing that you have worked still within a legal framework, even though it might not be applicable to that placement. So, for example, with DV, you can talk about, you can still bring in legislation and whatever else, like serious crime or things like that, to evidence why you would actually act on or advocate for that group of people.
Yeah, it's absolutely vital, isn't it? And that's what it's about, is evidencing and talking that through and relating it to the PCF legislation, etc. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Gavin, yeah?
Yeah, what I'd say here again, Lee, is that I talked before about from my own personal experience that about my voluntary work, and I did have a statutory placement. I did have a social services placement when I was training to be a social worker, but it still didn't stop me actually using the non-statutory experience that I had to help me propel me into my first job post-qualification, actually my second job post-qualification, because it was partly that it really assisted. And I can also think of some colleagues that I've had. One in particular who she went from a charity organisation that she was working for to working in a statutory role and then moving on to a senior role in a very short space of time. And that's because that employer recognised that it wasn't so much about where she'd worked, it was about the skills that she could bring to the job. And again, it comes down to how well can you communicate with the people you're there to deliver a service to? How well can you identify what risks and needs are and really sort of bring it home and make it into something real? Because what we're not looking for, and what employers aren't looking for, is someone who just ticks boxes and oh yeah, they've worked in the statutory setting, so they definitely know what they're doing. Obviously it helps that you've got that experience, but it's about you as a person, and it's about what value you can bring.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, David, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that, but in a slightly different way. I think an interview you always come across as service user focused, then irrespective of the organisation, because all of us are complicated, I think. I think that those are transferable skills, like I was saying before about empathy. People are people at the end of the day, aren't they? I think, and it's that face-to-face stuff I think probably makes the difference, and having narrative stories about that you can share and that are meaningful, irrespective of where you volunteer, I think tell a lot about you as a person and tell a lot about your skills.
Yeah, absolutely, David. I think when you've got that narrative, it allows you to then pick through and start with, if it's about a client's daily routine, you can pick through that from morning to night and relate that legislation to each part of the day and that theory and everything, and you can evidence that very clearly. If you've got that narrative, it runs along with it, doesn't it? And when you're in an interview, if you follow with that, it kind of it's sort of you can flourish your example from there. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the stories bring the compliance to life.
Yeah,
so I could sit there and just read the compliance manual to you because I know it, but actually as soon as I envelop that in a real life story, it brings both you and the compliance to life in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Does anyone else want to say anything, or should we move on to another question?
Well, I'll add one more thing to what David's just said. The examples. I think I've applied for some jobs, I've got them. I've applied for some jobs and I haven't got them. And I think when on the occasions where I haven't got jobs, it's because I haven't used good examples. I haven't actually said, this is how I made a difference. This is how I made an impact on someone's life. If you just go through the technical manual of things, you're not going to get very far, because a good employer won't be interested in that.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a really key point for tonight. Yeah, Alex, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think because I did a voluntary placement first and then statutory afterwards, and I think from doing a voluntary placement, it really teaches you about how you can ease that power imbalance when you're working with families, because you learn to, those people are there by their own consent. So that I know it's a bit different in terms of scenarios, but you learn really how to work with people and those one-on-one skills, those personal skills, communication skills. I think they're great transferable skills that can be used wherever you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're just mentioning voluntary work there and the charity sector, I think it's really important to remember that whilst you're on placement, you've got to remember that you've got the time now to build those skills and build that narrative skill and use that supervision, because when you enter the world of social work, it is completely different.
It's completely different. True for trial and error, have you? Whereas, definitely, just sorry, Lee, going to jump in on what you said, definitely use that time to try different approaches to the way you communicate with people, to build up a repertoire of different skills that you can pull out whenever you need them, what situation you need them for.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, David. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I think there's, just thinking about listening to you all as well, I think there's an element in there, isn't there, about, I know the why, but the important thing is the how to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I think the placement does. And if there was a bit of advice, I'm not good at that, by the way. I've never listened to my own. Is naturally try to get a placement in exactly the field you want to work in.
Yeah.
That's a free school.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Can I just say just to counter that as well, that often I've placed students in a setting where they said I don't want to work with so and so, and actually they've at the end of the sentence they say, oh gosh, Jackie, I love that place. Well, it's really, really good. I really enjoyed working with all the people, etc., etc. So it works both ways, really, I would say.
Yeah, no, I was one of those people who said, oh, I only want to do this, and I'm doing something what I thought I would do, and it's of massive interest to me now. So I think we'll move on to another question, and I think Stephanie's got another audio question, which came to us quite a few minutes ago. I don't know if that's still available, Stephanie. Is the person still there?
Still available. So,
Just bear with us. We'll just find this this person.
Emily, are you available?
Hello?
I think Emily's available. Let's try another one. Bear with me.
Not available. Okay, no problem. That's fine. We'll move on to another question. Let me have a look.
We've got one from Kofo, so I'll still mute him and see if he's available.
Yeah, okay, yeah, go for it. Yeah, if there's another audio one, absolutely. We're just waiting for another audio question, everyone. Sorry about this. Won't be too long.
David's ordering his coffee.
I'll move on to the next question, Lee.
You need your coffee. We've got to the next question. Okay, what
Start out at 3:30 this morning, so I think bear with me.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. We'll go back to some of the ones that we received before. And it's quite an interesting question, and one that I always wanted to know myself, which was from Louise. And it's, when do you start recommending to start applying for jobs? So she's coming up to a graduation. She's coming up to a course end. When is it that we should start applying for jobs? Anyone want to start off on that one? Yeah, Alex. Yeah.
Okay, I was quite laid back in my approach to finding jobs, to be honest, because I was dead set on staying with my last placement, the local authority that I was based with. But I know people who started really early. I know people who are still just starting to get jobs. I think it's all really down to you and how it fits with you. I mean, I was desperate for money, so I just wanted to start straight away. But I did, wait a bit longer than the people on my course did, and most of us are in employment now, so I do think it's just down to when you feel ready to do so.
Yeah, like a personal preference, isn't it? I think. Yeah. Jackie, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, because I was going to say, I say to my students, focus on the academic work, and to get that and to pass that, and then start thinking about applying for the job. So probably around about June, July time. I mean, the students that I saw today that were involved in graduation, most of them apply for their jobs in the summer. So they're now working. They've been working 2-3 months. So they've just started, on the road to becoming, to securing their first job. So most of them didn't do it at Easter. They started it in the summer because they were too busy finishing placement portfolios and the uni work and so on. And so they didn't have the headspace to be able to actually think about applying for jobs and so on, really.
No, absolutely. Gavin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking back to when I was applying for my first jobs. I mean, I was cleaning water coolers at the time when I was looking for jobs, but I also what I also had to bear in mind, and what I'd say to everybody is you've got to bear in mind is about what's the employer going to see, and do you have the requirements that enables you to apply for the job? Because if they're saying you have to be qualified, you have to have the certificate that confirms qualification, then you might be applying for a job that you're not eligible to even be shortlisted for. That said, it's all about what you're able to apply for. So I'd look at that first. You might find that there are jobs in social care that you are eligible to apply for even before you've got the qualification, but they might not be social work specific.
Yes.
Some people, there's a lot of people who find that they actually end up working in their first placements.
Absolutely.
Or the last placement, should I say, before they qualify. And that's what ultimately happened to me. So I'm cleaning my water cools and I get a call to say, do you want to work for your old team? And that's how it worked out for me. So I guess I'm a bit like Alex in that respect, and that I kind of was sort of relaxed about it. But it still had to be the case that I had to be qualified. I couldn't just walk into it after finishing the last placement. I had to, have that certificate come through before I was eligible. And that's the thing that I would say to anybody looking to apply. Yes, apply as soon as you can, but not before you're qualified.
I mean, although having you go ahead. Go ahead,
Jackie. It's fine.
Okay. No, I was going to say there are some students apply for social work jobs, and they haven't got the results yet, so they start working, and they're classed as being a social work assistant.
Yes.
And so then when the results come through, that's when their pay is backdated, and then they are now actually a qualified social worker. So it depends on the local authority really, or the organisation you're working for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Alex, did you want to say something?
I think, but basically Jackie just got it in a nutshell. So I was going to say I was quite lucky in the fact that I was employed from June as an intensive family support worker. I've got my HCPC through and everything else, my contract's changed, and I start my ASYE on the 29th. But also, just when you're looking for jobs, like I said, have a look at the step that's required. I know some people who are cheeky and did just apply for those posts and did still get jobs as ASYEs afterwards. I don't know how, but they did. But also look at what their deadlines are. When are they saying you need to apply by? And obviously work towards what it is that the employer is looking for and when they're looking to start the ASYE program or employment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can come to another audio question now. I think we've got one, Stephanie.
Okay.
Is it working?
Kathleen, can you hear us?
Hello?
Oh, brilliant. Hello. Do you want to ask us your question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, brilliant. Hi.
Hi. I'm so happy. You can hear me. Great.
Yeah.
I'm a newly qualified social worker. I've done my master's in social work. I can't tell you what a struggle I'm having, because the university didn't prepare you about the ASYE program, that how important this legislation is. So every social worker after 2012 should primarily do this post, because within 2 years, otherwise in the future the council will always expect you to have this under your belt. Now, considering this ASYE program is so important, so I've been looking for a post for ASYE and all the posts it's extremely hard to get this post, because they'll get taken so quickly away. Because I finished end of July, then I had a break for a few weeks, and then I feel like I've done the worst thing ever, because now I can't get that post. And then also I wanted to go into adult social care, and I understand that keeping limitations of not going to children's services that is why I'm in this situation. But at the same time, I don't see any ASYE posts for newly qualified, and it's such a requirement as well. So I don't know if you could give me any advice, any advice, like how I'm really actually really confused, and I'm really like struggling, and I feel like I've worked so hard for the last 2 years, and I just feel like, when am I ever gonna get a job? Like a lot of my peers are already in a job on an ASYE program. I just feel, is it me or what? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I think just quickly before we go to the panel, I think I'd just like to give you a bit of hope. I hope so anyway. I mean, I was in the same sort of position really. I was thinking, God, when am I going to get my job? I was panicking, you know, I basically applied for, I think I must have applied for 15 roles, I think, maybe something like that,
Oh,
put
okay.
applications in, and I got 2 interviews out of that and got one of those jobs. So I was really sort of,
Oh, okay.
you know what I mean? So I mean, if you put that into
Okay.
perspective, it was a lot
That
of good
sounds a
work
bit
in there.
better.
Yeah.
I feel it's
Sorry.
just me or something's going to happen because I already hold like a low self-esteem, but I shouldn't because I'm a very people's person and I could deliver work really well. I've always had fantastic feedback, but it's just because it's something that you can't help yourself, that you have a low self-esteem because now that everyone's in a job, you just feel like, oh, there's something wrong with you. But you suggesting that you apply 15 roles and 2 came up and then I'm nowhere near your
Yeah,
list
I
at the
mean, yeah.
moment.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what David put his hand up there. So
Oh,
let's give
okay.
David a little. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to give you a lot of hope, not a bit. I think the thing is that I want to apply it to something different. My oldest daughter is a clinical psychologist. Basically, it's the same thing. Jobs, the jobs are plentiful in some areas and not so plentiful in others, and it's very competitive. And your story sounds very similar to hers, and now she's happy working in the perfect job for her because she just kept going. So if I can give you some hope, it's that just keep going. You will get there, I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally go with that. Yeah. Jackie, yeah?
Yeah, I just want to echo that as well because I've got students that I met a couple today at the graduation, and some of them haven't got jobs yet. They've been applying but haven't been successful. And I think it's just about getting feedback in terms of your interviews and maybe thinking about, because I know, as I said before in a previous answer to a previous question, there are some local authorities that offer the ASYE program in the summer and also again in the new year. So if there's a local authority that you really want to work for, to perhaps to sign up for an alert, so that they can keep you up to date in terms of jobs and so on. And I suppose also, and it's important that you don't compare yourself to other people because you're on your own individual journey, and then you get there when you get there. That's the thing, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important not to compare yourself. I think that's what drove me to distraction, applying for 15 jobs. I think that, trying to compare myself to people that were already in the profession, etc. Yeah. Gavin, yeah?
Yeah, I think Tasnim, I hear what you're saying is, that you feel like you've got quite low self-esteem. I mean, what I would say there is that, just keep on pursuing with things. I think there's quite a vote of confidence here from I think the other people in the panel, but the key thing here for you is to have a vote of confidence in yourself, and I think you need to sort of appreciate you've passed your course, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You got onto the
Yeah, did. I got a merit in my masters.
That's good.
and that's really good, So you're partway there, but let me tell you something else. Here at Baswork, we get a lot of people who are in a similar situation to you. People who are qualified, they've done all the right things in respect to
Really?
and yet for some reason they're finding it difficult to get their first job. It's partly why we do this webinar. This is the second time we've run this webinar. But the other thing that we have, which you might not be aware of, is that if for Baswork members, we have a mentor scheme. And that mentor scheme is free. It's part of your member benefit. So if you're a member of Baswork,
Yes, no, absolutely. I won the 2 competitions recently. So for the international poster and for the Vision 2020, I came first.
Oh,
and I came second for the international one. I'm coming in the magazine next month.
Okay, right. So excellent. So a high-profile member here. But what I would say is that as a member, and this applies to everybody who's a member, for their first job in social work, our mentors can assist with that, and you'll have a one-to-one support with a social.
Oh wow!
So if that's something you're interested in, have a look at our website. You know, you
Sure.
can email us, and then what we'll do is we'll take it from there. But you know, follow. You know, listen to what's being said tonight. You know, keep on applying and don't give up. That's the key.
No, thanks. But I mean, I went to the conference in Dublin. I met Ruth Allen. She really liked me. She said you will be a fine social worker. I mean, everyone's just been giving great feedback. It's just, maybe, you know, I had a really fantastic interview at Hounslow Council. I think I didn't get selected because I talked about my personal experience, my personal life, and I think that went against me. So I think maybe I'm not gonna talk about my personal life. So I think that's an off-putting for an interview, I think.
Well, if I can just come in there, then I mean, what I would say is that personal experience can be very helpful. I think it's perhaps sometimes about how you apply that. Now, we've got limited time in how much guidance we can give you on your very specific case, but this is where maybe it will be helpful for you to have a look at our mentor scheme. You know.
Yes, I definitely will be taking that on.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. Yeah, brilliant. Jackie, did you want to say something? Or?
Yeah, I was just going to say as well that, you know, you talked about your recent achievements, to mention those as well. That, you know, you came first in the recent competition, second into the competition, and to highlight that as well, because that to an interview is very impressive as well.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really important to just sort of show yourself, isn't it? David, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I think it relates back to something we started talking about right at the beginning. I think what my daughter found very useful when she was struggling, she went and shadowed and worked and volunteered in an organisation to get her feet under the table, get a bit more understanding of process and, you know, what the job actually looks like. And then when a job came up, guess what? The job. So, you know, I think if you show willing, if you can't get in through the obvious route, I think, you know, the interview process is that challenging. I think volunteering offers another route to get you put in the door.
Absolutely, yeah, it really does, and I think that comes back to what we said really early on, isn't it? That's exactly right, David. Yeah, I think we'll move on to another question that's just come in. So this is, could you expand on the values-based recruitment, and is the STAR model to give examples of good practice still used? Does anyone want to weigh in on that one? Yeah, Alex. Yeah.
So you spoke about, well, you asked about giving practice examples, and for me, when I was being interviewed, that was what it was mainly about. You know, potential employers are going to know that you know about theories, they're going to know that you know about law, but what he's going to set you aside and he's going to demonstrate your knowledge and understanding of those theories is by using practice examples. So my advice would be, for everything that they ask you, using a practice example to demonstrate that you not only know of it, but you understand it and you know how to apply it, because that is what's going to set you aside from other potential employees, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Jackie, did you want to say something there?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I use the STAR model in terms of with students around applying for placement, completing the placement application forms. So they're using it to evidence the 9 domain areas of the PCF, to talk about the strengths and the areas of development, and they can be using that STAR framework to give examples from their volunteer experience or paid experience to be able to illustrate that they've got their current experience in relation to the 9 domain areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's brilliant. Oh, go on, Alex. Yeah.
I was just going to say as well, I think when you use examples, they don't always have to be examples of where things have worked exactly how you wanted them to work. It's about, okay, something didn't go quite so right. You know, how have you reflected upon that? And what would you do differently? And how have you gone and researched or had a look at some practice guidance to influence how you would act next time or practice next time?
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. There's quite an interesting question come through from someone that would like to work. They're an overseas worker and they're coming to the UK, quite specialist stuff, and they're basically asking if there's any resources, training schemes that are available in order for them to be successful at interviews for local authorities, because they've had concern that they haven't used and applied the frameworks in this country, you know, statutorily, you know, in local authorities, etc. So I'm wondering if maybe Jackie, you might know anything about that, or.
Thanks. I think that is it HCPC are doing a return to study, a return to social work, that they're offering that to social workers who've been out of practice for a number of years. So that could be a way in for that person to sort of to be involved in that, and to bring up to speed with the statutory frameworks, as you said, the legislation and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Yeah, Gavin. Yeah.
So yeah, Lee, I mentioned before about the mentor scheme. I'll come back to that. We also, again, for members, we support people who from overseas who've managed to get themselves registered with the regulator, but then can't get themselves that first job in social work locally. And the other thing is remember, you know, for those of you, and most of the people I believe who joined tonight are members of BASWA. You know, you're a part of a community of over 20,000 members across the UK. Most of those members being in England, but you know, we have them all over the country. And you know, I've had a member from the US who was in this very situation, and because he was part of this wider network, I was able to put in touch with someone who then put him in touch with someone else to help him get that first job. You know, that we talk about networking quite loosely sometimes, but actually you attend BASWA events, you become involved in things like branches. There's a greater opportunity through that networking and meeting other social workers then to find those opportunities. And we're always happy to help in any way we can through the staff base here at the head office. And of course, I'll keep coming back to it, the mentor scheme is a great resource for all members.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. I think networking is vitally important, isn't it? If we can come to the next audio question, I actually just need to quickly nip somewhere. I won't be 2 minutes, but if we can come to that, Stephanie, and then I'll be back in 1 second.
Great. I think we've got a Gek. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi.
Oh, fantastic. Hi. Oh, what would you like me to say? I'm sorry, because this is the first time I'm working on this.
Just ask your question, Gek.
All right, okay. No, I would just now someone asked me whether I would like to comment on something I just written. I talk about I'm a newly qualified social worker and I've been recently offered a job. However, it wouldn't start until January. So I'm trying to say that in some council now there are jobs, but they're doing you have to wait for a few months. In our local authority, they will take in 25 newly qualified social workers, and we all start in January. And if we miss this chance, the next batch will be sometimes like April or March. So this is in response to a question that just now a student was saying. Yes, it is very frustrating. So now I have a few months to wait. And also I want to say that the interview itself was quite competitive. There were 4 parts. You really have to prepare very well. And I was lucky enough, in the summer I went back to the university. I went to the career advisor. I asked them to help me from scratch to craft my CV and to help me with my interview technique. I learned a great deal with this one-to-one interview, and I felt that in the past 2 years in MSc course, we were not really prepared for interview. So I'm glad that the career advisor gave me a lot of support, and so I think it is invaluable if you have some support from professionals, and they could guide you and they can see things from a different perspective possibly, and I think it's fantastic. So I'm very grateful to get there. Also, I also use LinkedIn a lot. On LinkedIn, there are a few websites like One Stop Social, and Neil Thompson has got a learning platform. They are wonderful. I think I got a lot out of them. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, everyone. Do you know, I was just typing a little message there. I live above a French restaurant, and they were knocking on my door, and apparently there's a leak in my kitchen.
Right.
Believe it. So apparently I've just had to pause my washing machine. So anyway, carry on.
Well,
Sorry about that.
just gave us some really good information there, I think. Just some...
Yeah.
Yes, very good.
I caught the back end of it. It was about LinkedIn and one-stop social, which is things that I use, and it comes back to what you were saying as well, Gavin, about networking and getting to know people, and and making sure that you're sort of out there in the sphere. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to do when I got involved with the PPEG as well, and got involved with PASPA. Okay. Someone has asked, how many interviews did you go for before you managed to get one? Well, I said 2. And if we come back to, let me have a look. Okay, so we have got, I'm a qualified Spanish social worker, and I registered with the HCPC. Although I haven't practiced in the UK, I think we've kind of covered that question actually, haven't we, about the training and stuff? Yeah. Okay, so that's a similar one. And we've got another question come through here. Could I apply for adult social care, although my last placement was with children's and my main work experience was in? That's a really, really good question actually. Yeah, something that came up a lot at my university. I'm wondering, Jackie, if you want to start with that one.
Yes, I mean, I think you can. I mean, it's about highlighting the transfer, being able to highlight the transfer of skills from children to adults, and also having an understanding about the legislation, and also, you don't, if you're working with children, you work with the child, but you also work with the parent, and you're working in an holistic way. So you can't ignore the parent, you can't ignore the adult, just to focus on the child. You're working with the family as a whole. So I think there is that you are able to transfer from working with children to adults. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a few sort of questions coming in about that sort of transferable skills, and certainly, from my experience I worked as an IDVA, which is an independent domestic violence advisor, floating support worker. I worked in homeless services, but I'd never ever worked in a statutory setting, what you would call a local authority setting. And I think it is all about how you apply those transferable skills when you go to the interview and when you think about answering those questions. And that will come down to your examples. Again, we come back to it every time. It is all about really good narratives, using those examples, being proud of your achievements as well. You've got to remember, you've got to be really, really proud of the things that you've done for people, because you're changing people's lives. You're having an effect on people's lives, and I think you need to remember that every time you go to interview. Come back to it every time, the narrative and the examples and those transferable skills. Absolutely. I think you won't have a problem. Yeah. I'm just looking for another question. I've heard that interviews should be a two-way process. What questions could I ask about what the job could offer me without sounding too pushy? That's quite a good one, actually.
Good one, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Can I start? I mean, I always say to the students to ask about the ASYE program that they offer. Then I ask about pensions. Think about that now. And then also about the training and support that they offer to newly qualified social workers as well. Those are the three things that I say to my students to ask at interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important that you make sure that you're looked after. Yeah, Gavin. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it is important to ask questions, but remember why you're asking the questions. Don't just ask them for the sake of asking them because you feel that's how it needs to be seen. Ask questions that you genuinely want answers to, and maybe get a conversation going, because sometimes just shooting out questions isn't going to be helpful. It needs to be that real two-way process. It is an opportunity for them to see what you're about, that the whole interview is, but asking, if you get into that dialogue with them, they'll learn a bit more about you, but you'll learn a bit more about them, because you also need to be asking yourself constructively at some point, is this the job that is for you? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but by asking the questions, that's what you'll find out. And I think, Jackie, the questions that Jackie puts to the students, I think they're spot on. And, I think questions about pensions is fair enough. You know, because there's certainly ones that I always want to know about. But ask yourself before you go in, what do you need to know about this job to be able to function in it? What do you need to know about this job to make you really know that it is the job for you? And that's where I'd start from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, David. Yeah, David.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
I think, yeah, I think a bit of proper background research about the organisation you're going to work for, so that you don't ask the obvious. So that way it shows that you've actually done some work, and really had a look at the job and what it's about. So you can ask some more sort of probing questions. And sometimes I feel perhaps on the other side of that they'll spark the interest, and it'll help you stand out. Actually, I think to show that you've actually done your homework and you know a bit about the organisation of just necessarily that job that's been advertised.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, completely. So we'll come to another question. This question is obviously from someone who I think has been through quite a tough time. So this question is, how does one gain their confidence back after suffering discrimination and overt racism in their last placement? I think this is more about confidence, isn't it? And yeah. Does anyone want to start off with that? Has anyone had any difficulties with anything like this in the past, or something similar where they've lost confidence and managed to find their confidence back? Or
yeah, I can talk about that. Like, I'm a recovering addict.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I think broken's broken. I think what that looks like for everybody is different. And I think toe dipping back into I don't know who that is. Toe dipping back into life, whatever that looks like for you, and take it in bite-sized pieces rather than just rushing forward, because rebuilding your confidence might take some time, but keeping you well is probably the most important bit. I wouldn't necessarily define myself, by the way, by the job I do. We're all much more than that. It's not going to say on my gravestone, I wish I spent another day at work. So even though careers are important, I think sometimes we can over-egg all that and try to look at your life in more of a sort of balanced way. Jobs are important, but it's not the only thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Jackie, yeah.
I mean, I think also maybe looking at getting support from I don't know whether the person's still at university, from their tutor or from the placement person, just maybe it's about how the process was carried out, and maybe they didn't feel supported by the university around the allegations of racism that they were making about the organisation, and so perhaps maybe the way forward is for them to sort of seek out support from the university or from the students' union as well, if the person's still at university, to get that support to assist them, or maybe the wellbeing service as well, the counselling service that is available at the university to help them around that particular issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, Gavin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to hear about this person's experience. It's always sad when something like this happens. What I think, everyone else has touched on this partly. It's really important to perhaps reflect on what's happened and have an opportunity to maybe vent a bit, really. Is there anybody who you can speak to, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life or your university, to share this with, and somebody who can support you through that process? Because it's by accepting what's happened, and that's partly going to help you to move on with it. I mean, I can say from personal experience, when you've had a difficult experience in the workplace, it can have a long-lasting effect. But what you don't want it to do is define you. It's partly, as somebody put it to me once, about remembering who you are, remembering perhaps why you want to do this job and what it is that's going to keep you going. But crucially, I think it's about moving on and then finding something that is going to work for you, somewhere where you can have a positive work experience. Because social work's a great job, and there's lots of opportunities and lots of really positives about doing it. And so don't let this one experience be the thing that holds you back from achieving what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Gavin. Alex, would you like to say something?
I'm sorry, I know this has already been said, so I did just nip out a little bit. But I was going to say, use, I'm as as Gavin said, I'm really sorry to hear about your bad experience, but that's another something that you can reflect on and put into your own practice to then think, well, how would I want to be treated if it was me in this situation, or if you've experienced discrimination firsthand, think of it from the service user's perspective, who maybe can't come and talk to someone on a panel like you have been able to, and about how you'd be able to use them really well in your practice to work with people who are in those situations.
Lee, I think if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to bring in Wayne, who is one of our professional officers who feels like he wants to contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Wayne,
Hello there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hello. Hi.
Hi there, everyone. I've just been listening intently to some of the questions. Some really good answers there. I just wanted to give a viewpoint, really, rather than a question. I qualified in 2010, having worked in social care as a support worker prior to that. And firstly, to say that I was sponsored by my authority to undertake the social work qualification. But then when I qualified, I decided to move to the private sector. And ASYE wasn't available to me. And I worked there for 8 years or so prior to coming to Basworth. So in terms of my experience, I've not found it restrictive not doing ASYE. I mean, that could change in the future, depending on what opportunities I decide to take up. But certainly in terms of career opportunities, career development, it's not been an issue so far. So firstly, just to say that, really my viewpoint is just capturing some of the things that have been just discussed before, so do bear with me. There was a comment about building a portfolio in preparation for sort of first employment. I would definitely echo that. And just to give you a brief snapshot into when I qualified, as I said, I worked for Sheffield Council at the time, and I decided that I wanted to work in the private sector in fostering, and I knew that prior to doing my qualification, because I'd worked in fostering unqualified prior to that as well. And what I did was speculatively send my CV to different organisations that I wanted to work for. So there wasn't a vacancy as such. I sort of proactively got in touch with people who I knew to be recruiters. And that's actually how I got my first job in fostering, that somebody came back to me accidentally, actually. The email wasn't even intended for me. It was just an internal email. But I won't bore you with the story, but basically that created an opening where, they offered me a job. It was good terms and conditions, really good experience for my first social work role. So I would encourage people really to begin thinking about where you want to work and maybe proactively taking some steps. Networking's been discussed already. I think that's important, but also making use of the technology available at your fingertips in terms of the internet and email. This is going on a bit, but I'll just elaborate a couple more things. Also, just want to emphasise that there are different sectors within social work. It's not all about the public sector, although of course that is an important part of social work. There is the private sector, there is the third sector, also known as the voluntary sector as well as local authorities. So, do sort of cast your net far and wide is what I would encourage. Depending on your own circumstances, there can be sort of flexibility around working and other benefits for people. I've talked about being proactive and sort of perhaps sending a CV speculatively. Really encourage that. And just final point really is just to take any opportunities to broaden your skills, whether that be unpaid or in your own time, or even there might be different events and opportunities at university or things unconnected to that, perhaps outside of work, youth work and so on. Take up all those opportunities because it's something that will bolster your CV and your portfolio. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for all of that. I think on that point, actually, it'd be really good to just mention the PPEG group itself, so the Policy, Practice and Education group that I'm involved in, that I chair, and how valuable that's been to me in networking And for me, thinking about my career and the PCF and relatable social work skills and things. So anyone can become involved in that, and it's about sort of giving a voice to students and giving a voice to newly qualified social workers. So if you want more information on that at the end, please shout up. But you can also go on the BASWA website and find that information about the PPEG also. Okay, so we've got quite a few questions. I did just scan up to one. Here we go. So we've got one here. So I am a second year mature student in placement, but I keep thinking about my job prospects post qualifying due to an element of ageism. What are your thoughts about ageism? Does anyone want to start us off on that one? Yeah, David, yeah.
As I'm probably the oldest person on this seminar, yeah. I think it depends. I think that coming back to the prejudice question actually and the racism question before, the modern workplace, there's no place for any of this, to be honest. And if the organisation that you aspire to work with hasn't got policies in place and also a visible lived experience of a diverse work, then I wouldn't necessarily feel it would be the sort of place I wanted to go and work in the first place, to be honest. So, that comes back to my earlier point about research and getting to know a little bit about the organisation and everything before you start applying. Because, I'd want to know what I was letting myself in for before I even looked.
Yeah.
So I don't think ageism is I'm sure it is a thing. I'm sure lots of things are a thing in strength-based organisations, certainly like the one I volunteer with. That has no place, and it would never be.
Yeah, absolutely. Gavin, you raised your hand there.
Yeah, I'll be quite quick on this one, but I think when I first started training as a social worker, I was 20, and at that time, the average age of the social workers on my course and most courses was about 20 years older than that. So I was the youngest person on the course, and in that respect, I personally felt like I was at a disadvantage. They were actually a good bunch of people. I never felt like they held that against me. But when it came to applying for jobs, the way I saw it was, I'm at a disadvantage, so I'm going to find reasons to give them to employ me. I'm going to tell them about why I'm so great at what I do and what I can bring to their organisation. And that was, for me, how I addressed that. It's not that anyone overtly set out to exclude me, but I just thought, if I'm going to be competing with people who've got 20 years experience on me, then I need to show them what I can do. And that's what I'd appeal to anybody, whether you're on the older side of things or the younger side of things. Just look at what your strengths are and use those when you're in your interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're completely right, Gavin. I'd like to just come back to the point about loss of confidence. I think about before. It was a really important point, and I think from my own experience, I experienced a huge loss in confidence in one of my first placements, just through many different things that had happened, and it took me a long time in my third placement to really sort of get my head down, and a lot of support from my practice educator, a lot of support, really great practice educator. And I think it's about building that relationship with your supervisor, with your manager, with your colleagues, going and asking questions, and that helps build your confidence, going on training and being active and having a voice and sharing your experiences. And that's what's helped me build my confidence. It's all about sort of saying, well, I do it this way. Oh, well, and then having that verified, and then it's all about that sort of sharing and feedback, and things like this, that we're doing tonight are brilliant for that. And I think, really utilize your colleagues and your cohort if you're at university, your practice educator, your supervisor, and really just talk about everything that you need to, because that's what's going to give you your confidence, I think, at the end of the day. Yeah, absolutely. I've got another question then. If everyone, does anyone else want to say anything? No? Brilliant. Okay, so we'll go with another question. This question is, do you know of any employers who have asked for a distinction over a pass from the degree when applying for roles? Yeah, Jackie.
No, in a word, no. I mean, I think most employers they want to know what your qualifications are, and they want to know you've got an MA or BA in social work. I mean, I know myself personally, and I've been qualified over 20 years. Nobody's asked me about, whether I got a merit distinction. I mean, I can't remember well, you know, because we didn't have it in those days. It was just MA social work and that was it. So no, I don't think employers are concerned about you know whether you've got a pass or a mate. They're more concerned about, as you talked about already, about your experiences and the learning that you've gained from being on either an MA or a BA course, and the practice experience you've had as well. I think that's what they're more concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're definitely right there, David. Yeah.
I think. Sorry, it's going to come across like the advice thing again. I do apologise.
No, you go.
But I think your bits of paper, whatever they may be, get you an interview. You get you the job. So I think they're sort of an entry into like your ticket into that room. And then when you're in the room, it's up to you. I think that I like the idea of the more practice on interviews somebody was talking about earlier, and you know, getting stuff done like that, because you know, the poor lady who was talking earlier about applying for lots of jobs in knockbacks. Well, that's just the opportunity to get in the room. So keep going at that bit, and then eventually you get in the room, and then it's down to you. So I don't, you know, I think the bits of paper aren't that important once you get in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it is about how you come across, definitely. Gavin.
Yeah, I'd echo those points. I mean, what I would say is if you say to somebody that, you know, if you were to be in a position where you have got those things, and you have got the merit or the distinction, just saying that you've got those things aren't going to be enough to say that actually you're worthy of the job. That said, if you have got those things and you really do want to capitalize on them, then, you know, if you are going to do that, you're going to need to say about what it is that led you to get the distinction and how is it that would translate into the actual job role. So if you don't have it, don't worry, there are other things you can reflect on. You reflect on your strengths. But if you do, don't be afraid to mention it, as long as you make it relevant to the job that you're applying for.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Does anyone else want to say anything about that? Or? No, brilliant. Okay, so we've got another question. I'm in my first year of MSc social work. I'm wondering if there are any advantages or disadvantages in terms of graduating from the MSc or the undergraduate course. Kind of related to something you sort of said, Jackie, about it doesn't really matter what you. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that in particular.
I mean, I think the MA students tend to get their jobs first, earlier. I mean, I'm not sure why that is, but I mean, but having said that, I've got MA and BA students going for the same jobs, and they are both successful. So I don't think it makes that difference. I mean, actually, I think the BA students often have an advantage over the MA students because they've had 3 years, whereas the MA students have only got 2 years. And also, I think employers also expect more from the MA student compared to the BA student. And every year, I say this every year to the MA cohort, and they come back up to their place when they say, yes, Jackie, you were right. Because there's an assumption that because you're a master's student, you've got that, you're that much ahead compared to your BA counterpart. But actually, in my experience, I think the BAs are more advanced than the MAs in terms of that first placement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously 3 years versus the 2 years, isn't it? And I think it's more about study and application of academic criteria rather than you know, yeah. And it's another route in, isn't it? I think as well. You know, for people who have already got a BA that want to do social work, you know, they can do the MA and then become a social worker. So I think it's just different that way. Yeah. Gavin, I nearly called you Stephanie then because I was just looking at the name at the bottom. I was like, that's not your name.
No, I'm not Stephanie. I'm Gavin. No, there's lots of different routes into social work these days. You know, we've got multiple ways in. It still comes back to you, and you know, one of the great tools that we've got that we should all be reflecting on as social workers is the PCF, the Professional Capabilities Framework. You know, ask yourself where you are in that. You know, use the kind of the strengths that you've got to. You know, use that to help guide you on focusing on what your strengths are, and then take that to any job that you're going to apply for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. If we're all done with that one, I've got another question here. Do employers like to hear that you are still continuing your studies? For example, I'll be continuing my education after qualifying with an MA in advanced child protection. This is completely to fulfill my own need. However, will employers welcome this? I think, well, I mean, firstly, I think that absolutely, you know, it's all about professional development. It's all about your CPD, your continuing professional development. So I think absolutely any employer is going to welcome that. And I think it's about how you build that into your career, how you build that into your daily, you know, the tasks that you've got to complete, whether you're full-time, you're working part-time. I think it's just all about that, and communicate that with, you know, the employer that you're working with. And I'm sure they'll be absolutely, you know, they'll love that you're doing that, and they'll take that on board. Yeah, absolutely. David, yeah.
Sorry, on.
No, it's fine.
Again, I think continual education is really, really important, you know, personally, and I think, and it's great to see in individuals because things change, and you can have somebody who's worked in a field for 20 years, but basically they haven't got 20 years worth of experience. They've got 1 year's worth of experience multiplied 20 times. That's different. So I think that, you know, as new things come along and new challenges come, and also just to keep yourself interested and current. So there's lots of avenues in our sort of field, and you know, if you're lucky enough to go and work for a, you know, an organisation where they're big investors in people, then they'll want to you know, continually invest in you for continual education. Everybody wins. Service users win, you win, and your employer does. So, you know, I think it's a massive thing.
Yeah, brilliant. Jackie, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add to that, and I said as well. I was going to say as well that, you know, maybe they could negotiate about getting time off to attend the courses. Maybe the organisation could pay something towards the MA as well. You know, so because again, it's about, as you said, David, it's about investing in people, and also in terms of CPD as well. I mean that to me, if I was looking to employ that person, I would, because that's quite impressive, and it shows that you're very proactive as well in terms of your development as well.
Gavin, you also raised your hand there, yeah?
Yeah, sure. It was just a quick thing, really. Yeah, absolutely. Any employer should be supporting your continuous professional development, and they should welcome it. If you go into a job interview saying, "I'm also going to be continuing with my studies," that should be something that's welcomed. Be prepared in the very particular environment we're in at the moment, for some employers to maybe be a bit skeptical, and just be ready with some kind of response of, are you going to be able to manage this alongside the day job? Yes, they should be supporting you, but we are finding ourselves in a very high pressure environment at the moment. And what really the employer should be making sure is that you don't set yourself up to fail, and they don't set you up to fail as well. I think what Jackie said is right, and if there's any room for negotiation, brilliant. But just be mindful that although we should be encouraging it, there might be a little bit of skepticism by a manager who's perhaps dealing with a very high pressured team. And that's where you've got to be just be mindful of that. But certainly don't not do continuous professional development. It's very important, and it'll be really valuable, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely echo that. Alex, would you like to say something?
Yes, everything everyone says bang on. I was just thinking about what Gavin has said. In that, you know, where I work, caseloads are very, very high. You know, people are doing, you know, courses, you have to go on courses, you have to do all these sorts of different things. But just to make sure, you know, it's fabulous that you want to do these things, and it's fabulous that you want to progress, but also make sure that, you know, you're not being bogged down with, you know, your normal caseload work, your administrative tasks, your degree that you want to do, and then you need time for yourself as well. Make sure that you prioritise that, so that, you know, when you're not going, you've been at work all day, you're going home and doing whatever portfolio work you need to do as part of is it a master's you said that you were doing, sorry if that's wrong. You know, make sure that you're still prioritising that time for your family, or just to chill out, and, you know, don't burn yourself out with all these different things that you want to do. That was fine.
No, absolutely, that is completely right, and I think it's really, really easy for us to burn out without even noticing. I think because you just want to do the job, you want to do your best, and you're studying, and you want to complete your degree, you want to do this, you know, you always want to do your best. I think it's very important. I always say there's 3 C's. It's communicate, communicate, communicate. You know, you've got to, with everyone all the time, and the more you do, you know, I think the better you'll feel. Okay, so there's another question here. Do you think people on routes such as Think Ahead or Step Up have more chance of getting a job? Jackie, you smiled there. Did you want to say something? As well? Yeah, no, I'm not.
Yes.
Who would like to go first? Alex, go on.
No, go on, I don't mind Jackie going first.
No, I don't mind Alex going first.
One of you has to.
When I was starting, when I was finishing my degree, there was this massive hoo-ha over step up and frontline and those sorts of things. And, you know, it would have been heard through the grapevine that we weren't going to be offered frontline roles because we'd just done the BA, and it's a load of nonsense. I don't think they've got any more chance than you have got. And what you have to remember is this isn't to slander frontline or any of those, because, you know, we're all on the same page, we all want to do the same role, but the structure of that program is far, far different to a degree. Jackie, you're nodding your head, you agree with me.
Yeah,
you know, it's a completely different setup, one that I don't think is a representative of general practice. That's neither here nor there. No, I think it's nonsense. You have got as much chance as anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would agree with what Alex has said, because again, it's about how you sell yourself at interview. As we've been talking about this evening, is how you present yourself. You know, your skills and knowledge are just as valid as somebody else who's done the fast track routes. So again, it's about confidence and how you sell yourself and how you present yourself to an employer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, completely. I think there doesn't seem to be any more questions coming through at the moment. Gavin, are you?
I was just going to come in on the last point.
Go for it. Yeah.
I mean, you know, we talk about job interviews being a two-way process, and social work training is the same. You know, it's not just about the teachers you have on your courses, it's about you as a student and how well you've done to learn over the course of your training. You know, it's a two-way process. And what I'd say is I know social workers who've done the more traditional courses. I know social workers who've done the fast-track courses, you know, there's good social workers across the board. And the crucial thing that's going to get you that job isn't about what course you've done. It's about you and what you bring to the table and what you bring to your service users. And that's the crucial thing here. So, you know, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, completely. We've got another question. So, how important is social work theory at interview? I think I could go. Oh no, go on, Jackie. Yeah.
Okay. No, I think students have said to me, or former graduates have said that they've been asked about how they've applied theory to a particular case example that they've talked about, and also they've talked about how they've used research as well. They've been asked about what current research is informing their practice, about evidence-based practice. So I think it is very important. And it's important to have those examples that we talked about already this evening, where you're able to illustrate. I used a task-centered approach. I used solution-focused approach that was successful, what wasn't successful, etc. And to illustrate the point you're making in terms of working with a particular service user. So for me, I think it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely sort of applying the theory, and it's about that again, that narrative, isn't it? And that'll jog your memory when you're in the interview. You'll think, oh, this is what I did, and that's how I applied it, and you can think back to your critical appraisals of practice and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that's really important. We've got one more question here. It says, does the professional capabilities framework apply to England only? And if so, do you know what the Scottish alternative would be? I'm looking at you, Gavin, I think. For that one.
So the PCF's a great framework, but there are other frameworks which are used by the other countries. You'd need to speak to one of my colleagues in one of those other countries to know exactly what the frameworks are. Unfortunately, I can't off the top of my head tell you what they are. I do apologize, but do take a look at the website and feel free to contact the local offices in those other countries. So Jackie, you might be able to elaborate.
I think they use the key roles in Scotland. I think, but don't quote me. I know we obviously used to have them here, but I think they still use the key roles system that we used to have here.
Okay, what's that, Jackie? The what system?
The key roles. We used to have. I don't know if you remember the. 8 or the 6 keywords we used to have. Oh, maybe I'm showing my age now. I'm showing my age now. Yeah, the keywords were the precursor to they came in before the PCF.
Okay.
They had the keywords, so that's probably what they're using in Scotland.
Yeah. But if we have a look on the BASWA website and maybe contact someone there, we'll obviously get an answer.
Yes.
I think we're sort of going to draw this to a close now. I think we've had some really interesting discussions, and I think we've answered a lot of questions. Actually, I'm really pleased with it. It's gone very well. I just want to thank everyone for being on the panel. And if you've got anything that you wanted to say at all, now is the chance. If you've got anything lingering around from any of the questions that you think, oh, actually, yeah, I'd quite like to just mention that. But I mean, from me, I think I just want to sort of wrap up. I think for my points, what I've taken from this is what employers are looking for, what to do at an interview, etc. And for me, the biggest thing was always, and I've said it, and it's been said loads tonight, it's been worn out, but it's about having those examples. Get 3, 4, 5, maybe 4 or 5 really key examples, and take those in with you. And if you've got that narrative approach, you can start from the start and finish at the finish. And it sounds really simple and daft, but if you take that process all the way through, you'll apply your key theory to it, and you'll hit all those targets when you go to interview. And I think that's really important. And then I think for me, that's been the biggest thing for tonight. And I think that if anyone was going to take anything away from tonight about interview, that would be really good. And if there's any more questions, if you've got a pen and paper, you can email england@baswa.co.uk. all right, so I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything, but Alex is raising her hand, and Jackie.
Okay. So I think one of the key points that's come out through the questions is this, is confidence and feeling lacking in confidence. And it's just to say that, we all use these skills every day, talking with people. It's just normal life. But then you sat in a seat, fired questions at you, and you either blank. But just remember, you do it every day, day in and day out. Don't be put off by it. There's no one else in that interview that's going to be like, she's amazing. You've got, or he's amazing, sorry, gents. Just sell yourself, and like Lee said, taking those star examples where you can completely unpick them, so you can show every element of your practice, be it, utilising the law or theories or anything, and just, try not to let confidence stagger any of that process, because you've got this far, you've done something amazing, and just take that with you.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. Yeah, completely. Yeah, agree. Jackie,
can I just say as well that the thing I would take from it as well is that you're on your own journey, that you don't be competing with other people. When I was doing my course, some people got their jobs at Easter, and of course you begin to panic, but you'll get your job at the right time. And I think just to make sure that you focus on your university work, because then that's the stepping stone to you getting your first job. So if you have to retake assignments because you've been so focused on getting a job, then that doesn't make sense really. So you have to focus on the university work, your placement, etc. And also to be make sure that you're able to explain, as people have said, about the skills that you've got, the placements that you've done, and the learning that you've gained from these things. That's the key bit for me. Not just to give me a list of what you've done, but also talk about the learning that you've gained from carrying out those various tasks as well. And also, don't worry, you will get there. You will get there as well.
Absolutely. I think that's it, isn't it? Don't worry, you will get there. Definitely. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. And again, I'll just say, if you've got any questions about anything that you've heard tonight, you want to have anything. David, you're putting your hand up. Sorry. Go for it.
Paul, I was just waving goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're waving goodbye. Okay, well, no, if you've got any questions that you want us answering, just email england@baswa.co.uk and we can send you that information. Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. 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 Bye.